welcome to From the Nightmares of Hike Danny, and this is Commission 10 of Feral Dolls. So for this project, as you can see, I'm using Monster High's Deuce Gorgon. I believe this was the scariest Deuce. I actually already tried to repaint him in the past, it didn't go so well, so I erased his face and trashed his wig, and now it was a perfect commission to finally work on him again. My client had this idea of a fallen angel in almost neon pink color, and he was supposed to be a love angel. So they provided me with reference photos and a doodle. So I took all this and began working on him. And in case you didn't know, when you remove Juice's snake head thingy, there's like a gap left after, so I covered that with 4 black Obercast thermoplastics. I bought that from ebay.co.uk. It's just the perfect material to use in such cases. I've seen some people use epoxy sculpt and it just breaks when you squeeze the head. But anyhow, I began by warming up his head with a hairdryer, then I removed his head. Even though there is no paint, but I still cleaned his face with pure acetone, then I washed it with water off camera. I began to repaint by brushing his face with pan pastels. Then I began painting his eyes, and as you can see, I start with really light pencils, and I don't push the pencils very hard, otherwise I'm risking to crack the layer of MSC. And also I do a lot of blushing together by drawing with the pencils to give more depth and dimension. And while I'm repainting, please take your time to subscribe to this channel, cause it really helps me to get discovered by more people and be able to make more content for you. I blushed his lips and began adding some pink blush to his cheeks and forehead. Then I darkened the eyes and drew the upper and lower eyelids. And then I added some color to his irises and drew the pupils black, and I also drew some shadows and did the catch lights. And then I also added shadows around his tear duct and nose bridge. Then I blushed under his lower eyelid. So my client was also inspired by the elves on Netflix, I believe, so they asked me to paint a specific ornament on Doll's forehead. Of course they sent me a reference photo of that and I didn't like it, so I came up with my own design. I really adore Art Nouveau, so I tried to paint this as close to that as possible. And if you are wondering, what do you use to clean your makeup brushes? Well, it's a simple brush cleaning sponge from Avon, but most of the time I rewash them over and over again. I added some shadows to his lips, then I defined his jawline. And I also added shadows to his hair part line. Then I also darkened his scar or forehead ornament. And this is how his face looked at the end. I removed his old body blush. And then I blushed it once again. And as always, I'm using this gorgeous alpaca hair to make a wig for him. I dyed them pink off camera by using professional dyes that they use at salons and stuff. It's a super tedious process. Not only I washed, processed, sauteed, dried, brushed, also dyed the hair and repeated all these steps again. And by the end I also used some red dye to just intensify the pink a little bit more. Then to make alpaca wefts I used this plastic board or whatever this is and tacky glue. Then I pulled them off and cut the edges a bit narrow. Obviously you can glue the wefts directly to the head, but I find it better and more neat to make a wig cap. So I used some tulle to make it. I believe I used total of 4 layers of tulle. Then I added some tacky glue to the wig cap. Once the tacky glue dried, I removed the wig cap and then I cut out the excess tulle. Then I began gluing the wefts on one by one. What I will recommend you is that cut the length that you need anytime you glue the wefts, because it's super messy and hard to cut and style once you have all the wefts glued and kind of layered on one another. It just gets super difficult. And I also used an eyebrow razor to cut the hair. However, I'm not sure why I didn't record much of it. I would say that I do enjoy both wig making and rerooting, but I kind of prefer rerooting a bit more. See, this is where you should be using an eyebrow razor. All these hair sections, they need to sort of blend with each other. This is how it ended up looking, and I also added a few more wefts of camera to mimic his hair part line. Okay, so the design originally had no horns, and this was my own idea to give him a pair. So I asked my client, they approved it, so I used War Black copper cast thermoplastics again and sculpted the horns. Then I warmed them up and glued directly to his forehead, and as you can tell, I don't need glue to do this. I absolutely don't have to attach wires and do holes on his forehead to sculpt this out of epoxy sculpt and then fear that they might crack or something. You can skip all that spiel with this material. However, I would recommend you to do this before beginning the repainting, because you are still risking to damage the repaint. Then I cut out some narrow straps out of 4-ply and I rolled them over his horns to create some more realistic texture and hide the spots where the horns are growing so that it won't seem glued, like sticked on his forehead, and it will look more as if they are growing like inside of his head sculpt. Then I glued the wig on his head and I also gave him a pigtail. His OG pigtail was a bit short, so I attached some extensions. Then I began working on his outfit, specifically the gladiator skirt. I cut out the straps using this pink leather imitation. I was initially thinking that this is how I'm going to place the shrubs, but obviously this just didn't work. I decorated them with pink metal hoops, and I also inserted mini eyelets or grommets. I didn't record the process of how I did this, and initially I bought this for a corset. However, I will provide the link for you to buy it yourself. Then I cut out the second pair of shrubs. These were thicker compared to the previous ones. I stick them to a paper tape. I tried this on Doll's body and then I glued everything in place. Then I attached the other ones over them. These are the eyelets up close. These were the smallest size available. You basically make a hole on a shrub, then pass them in with a needle. Then you have to have these tools and a plastic head hammer to heat them in place, and obviously the skirt couldn't be see-through, so I cut out another layer and glued that to his skirt. Then I also attached chains to his skirt and hoops by the ends of it. I painted the skirt layer with darker paint using fabric paint. Then in the end I glossed it with a silver paint. My client asked me to add a bit gradient to the skirt, so I also painted that. Then in the end again I glossed them with a silver fabric paint. I also glued some of these chameleon rhinestones to it. Then I began making the sandals. I rolled his foot joints with tape, then rubbed with a kitchen rub and taped over that. Then I began drawing the pattern for sandals. I cut them out, removed the excess tape and rubbed. Then I placed them on thicker paper and traced them out. I traced this on leather and cut them out. I squeezed the metal hoops to make them more ellipse shape. And then I passed them through the sandal shrubs. Then I cut out the actual bases of sandals out of 4-blah. I warmed them up with a candle, sculpted them to fit his toes. Then I glued the leathery part to the base. Then I also glued the shrubs to the sandals and passed the hoop into it. Then I painted the insides of the sandals silver with a fabric paint. I did some right and left markings on them and I really wanted to hide that, but it didn't really work. But at the same time, no one is going to undress this doll, like no one will ever be able to see that. Then I painted the soles. Now I felt like the sandals looked a bit plain and I decided to pierce them using hoops and beads. And as you can see, I painted them as well to have a gradient. Then I also attached these chameleon rhinestones. I also glued this pink shoelace to the sandal edges so that the roughness of Warbler's texture will be covered. And I also glued silver thread as well. Then I began making cuffs for him, as always out of Warbler. And I actually made a mistake here by not wrapping his hands in a kitchen plastic, and Warbler ended up sticking to his hands, and while I was trying to remove them, I accidentally stabbed my finger with scissors. But anyhow, I did this all over again, and this is how the cuffs looked. Then I painted the cuffs pink. I cut out some straps. I bought this really amazing tool which does like dots over the fabric so that I will be able to glue rhinestones with equal distances from one another. Then I also made buckles. And glued the straps on. I doodled the shape of a heart that I had to make on his chest. I made it with beads, but it looked kind of bulky, so I removed them and I just left a metallic heart. Then I took some wires and sculpted this ornament to give it more like I wanted it to look like, as if the heart has horns of its own, kind of more like, again, very Art Nouveau-esque. And then I glued these hoops and passed the straps in. I also attached buckles and rhinestones to it. And this is super meticulous, but I really wanted the hearts to have some texture, so I glued these tiny balls that are made for nail art, like to decorate your nails and stuff. This was on a microscopic level, but somehow I managed to glue them on. Now remember the shoulder thingies that I initially made for this doll? Yes, it's the same client, so I'm going to use them for this current one. I removed the brown paint using pure acetone, then I painted them pink. Obviously this just couldn't be so plain, so I painted some Art Nouveau-esque ornaments all over them, then I painted them silver again. And I also glued this metallic thread. And I did holes with a needle, and I attached hoops and chains so that they would be kind of dangling off of his shoulders. Then I combined all these outfit pieces together, and this is how it looked. Now this was totally unnecessary, and even my client told me that I no longer have to make an arrow and a bow, but I still ended up making them. First I doodled the shapes, and then I cut out a warbler shrub, and then I warmed it up and sculpted the bow shape. And then I cut out this piece and attached it to the bow. Obviously it needed to be fantasy inspired, so I cut out a lot of extra parts and I sculpted them all over the bow. I also made a case where he will store the arrows. Then I painted the bow this maroon pink shade. And I also glued this metallic thread to its edges. Then I began making the arrows, and it's a combo of warbler and toothpick. Then I decorated the case, and I literally forgot to show you the end result of this. It actually looked kind of cute, but I forgot, sorry, there's so many things going on in this video, I'm not able to keep in track with them. Now my client sent me this design for the wings, so I printed them, then I cut them out. I traced them on this transparent plastic board. Then I cut that out as well. I went to our local stores and I bought this bag of pink feathers, and you can see they were attached to this shoelace thingy, so I removed them one by one. And as you can tell, the feathers had two sides, the rough one and more of a fluffy one. So I cut out all the rough sides and removed the fluffies because we won't need those for the wings. Then I gave a small feather shape to each and every single one of them. Then I used red dye to dye them into different shades of reds and pinks. Also back then I had no idea that I'm supposed to dye stuff while doing it on a stove in a boiling hot water to get better results, so anytime things wouldn't work out I would just blame red dye. I don't know, I was so clueless back then. And obviously, as you go with the gradient, you kind of add less and less red dye to have slightly lighter pink. Then I glued some pink organza to the transparent film, and then I cut out the excess fabric. Then I applied few layers of tacky glue to the wings cause I had a feeling that the feathers will not stick very well to this base. It was kind of silky. These are all the shades that I dyed. Then I used a Sharpie and some other markers to paint the areas accordingly to match with the feather shades. Then I glued every single feather individually by hand from all 4 sides of the wings. And we are not going to talk about how much time it took me to finish this up. And also I'm not going to talk much in this process, just please keep watching without skipping it so that YouTube will think that this video is not bad and it will eventually recommend it to a few more people. And after I was done working on his wings, this is how they ended up looking. And finally, for the skirt cape, I used a chiffon and I stitched sequins and beads to its edges, but I ended up not using it because it looked terrible. So I decided to go for fabric shopping again, and I found this fabric and it just had this perfect shape, like stitched with sequins and stuff, and it was just ideal for a cape. So I cut it out and attached the pink chiffon from the back, and I restitched all the beads and scales to its edges all over again. And after all that work, this doll was finally done. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you loved the end result, and if so, then please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel. And also shout out to my amazing Patreons for their ongoing support, and if you would also want to support my art here on YouTube, the link to my Patreon is under this video description. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and now enjoy the end result pictures, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.